Hey everyone, and welcome back to I Will Go Down with the Ship. My name is Heather.
I'm Chelsea, and today we have Mon with us.
Hello, it's me.
And so Mon is the author of a
In the
really
wasteland, there ain't no rules.
yes, and it's very dark, but it's very good. I love dead dove stuff, like where you're kind of pushing the boundaries and trying to explore things in obviously a healthy way through writing, but I loved the fic. So Chelsea, why don't you start with your questions and we'll just roll from there and have a conversation.
All right. First of all, what exactly inspired you to write this particular fic?
Um, Honestly, the scene itself in was it four? Episode four. Um,
Yep.
it just it was one of I think most emotionally intense scenes in the whole show. Like obviously you have the ending where everything goes down, but there are little bumps in the road, for Lucy particularly. And when she meets the ghoul, she is completely out of her element. And then that scene happens where she attempts to flee. She has nowhere to go. She has no idea where she's going, and she just gets captured again because she just stands there and doesn't know where to go. So when she gets captured, I think they have this strange exchange of power, and it's like that moment where her teeth come out. And I just thought that it was a really interesting reaction that they had out of Cooper, out of the ghoul, where he doesn't seem that enraged about it. He's like, well, there you are, you little killer, got you there. And I'm just going to take your finger. Like, he's not that mad about it. Um, but I thought, I want to take it into another way. I want to take it into a place where he gets really mad about it. Like, how dare you, how dare you bite off my finger?
Right.
And it just like, I just saw that scene. I was like, okay, here we go. This is the scene that kind of sparked it. Just from that, I haven't finished the entire season by the time I was writing this fic. Um, but yeah, I just sat down. We kind of watch it like week after week. We pace ourselves. Um, well, day after day, I want to say, not week after week, but like day after day, we pace ourselves. We didn't binge. So I had those like days or nights between episodes to just start cooking. Um, but that was it. That was the inspiration. Just the scene itself, it was so charged. It was so emotionally charged that it gave me ideas.
Well, I think too, what you talked about in the power dynamics, it's like I was actually surprised, like doing the rewatch of it, that Lucy actually bites his finger off because she's
Yeah.
so reserved and like he pushed her to that limit. And I think that that excited him. Like he is able to push her buttons. And
Mm-hmm.
then I really liked how, in a way, Cooper kind of loses, in your fic at least, he loses that control because he needs to get that power back. And this is a way that he can do it. And so it's not so much what actually like that physical interaction between them, it's a power exchange. And I really like how like it just snaps. I mean, and
Mm.
because she's this vault dweller, she's everything that he hates, like everything into one thing. The fact that she potentially reminds him of Barb in that way of like that, she wants to do the right thing and, what she thinks is the right thing. And I, I really, because when we're talking about stuff like non-con, it's like how do you take that and get a happy ending out of it? And so I think the setup is so incredibly important for us to go on that sort of journey, and the way that you've set it up really really works with the story that you've developed. So I think you did an excellent job with that.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
was structured fantastically, and I think you got the character motivations for the story that you're telling nailed down so well. And character motivations are so important. And you guys will see us rant about this a lot in the podcast. Is a thing that we get so frustrated with in mainstream media is when they take characters that they've established for us and they give them inconsistent motivations, or they make them break from the motivations that they've set up. And you don't do that in your fic. And I thought that was really strong writing on your part.
Thank you. I try to sort of take it one bit at a time, most of the time, where I'm kind of exploring one sort of aspect of a character in one story. It depends, but I usually tend to write shorter pieces, like little one shots. Most of the time, you know, I don't really think about it too hard. It's just my camera. Oh, it's very funny. I need to stop waving my arms. It's gonna be really hard. But I try to sort of take one character aspect at a time and write about that in one fic. But this one kind of started out as this first chapter, the singular chapter, just born out of that moment, out of that scene that I talked about. And then I didn't really structure, so like this is quite high praise because I didn't really structure for chapters when I first started writing. I literally just wrote that single, it was meant to be a one shot kind of thing, you know how it goes. And then I finished that one shot. I was like, no, there's more here. And then I sat down and I actually penciled out 3 chapters straight away. So it became 4 out of 1.
I think it's great too. Sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
You go ahead first, actually.
No, I was gonna say I loved how we see this evolution of Cooper, of how he wants that power and he wants her to kind of know her place. And yet after he does it, he he slowly starts, it's almost like he's losing that power to her, where he thinks he's physically taking it from her, but in reality, the more times that he's with her or even just being around her, he slowly starts to succumb to that inner turmoil or that emotion. And so really, if we're looking at it from a power dynamic, Lucy does have the power, even though she is the weaker one between the two, or that these things are happening to her, because he winds up, it's not even about the guilt that he feels, but about the emotions that being with her on a physical like level bring out in him. And I just really loved that inner conflict that he has across those 4 chapters. And so, you know, I loved that you start off with a non-con and then you go into the dub con, and then slowly it's like, you know, from the darkness to the light, essentially. And I thought that was really beautifully done.
It was absolutely fantastically done. And now I need to give my ADHD brain a minute to remember where I was going. No worries, no worries. My brain does this all the time. I'm so scattered. Gosh. I just want to also compliment you on how well you incorporated that scene where she's drinking the irradiated water, because I'm obsessed with that scene on a molecular level, because it is such a person consuming the pomegranate in the underworld kind of moment that you don't necessarily go back from. And I love how in your fic Cooper is just enjoying watching her do something that he knows is going to damage her. And you, like, even though you didn't structure it necessarily and you didn't plan for it to be 4 chapters, I love the character arc of moving from that very dark and violent moment where he snaps, and like seeing how he goes from, like Heather said, like not necessarily pitch black, but close to like lighter shades of gray, and like, you know, becomes more emotionally vulnerable to Lucy. Even though he might not necessarily want to, I very much enjoy that arc that you established. So I think you are a natural storyteller in that you just, even though you planned for this to be a one shot, you took it and made it, you know, longer and put an arc in it that engages readers who love the fandom, and it's believable.
That's the number one thing I think I try to go for. I think at some stage when you're writing a fic, you have to really put to rest the idea that you're going to write something that's completely in character and completely in the world, because I've never played the games. You know, I should put it out there, disclaimer, I'm not a follow player. So I don't really like know the lore very much. I do have some information, but you know, I try to just take it again one bit at a time. I'm telling one little story that may not be fully in line with the world, might not be fully in character, because I am clearly changing events here. So some elements might be a bit out of character, but kind of like internal
For what
consistency
you set
is,
up.
yeah, the like my own setup needs to kind of pay off. Like I'm just trying to do these little self-contained animals. I don't know what to call them.
Did
I
you
think
find it? Oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
thing, though, like when the characters sort of have a life of their own in your head and like speak to you in a very real way, and like finally the light bulb came on. Going back to what I was gonna say earlier, is I love those moments where you write something and you think it's gonna be shorter and self-contained, and then you get to what you expected to be the end of it, and you have that moment of, no, wait, there's more. How often does that happen for you in your fic writing?
Mm, not that often. I find that I either set out to write something longer or I don't. I kind of have this idea before I begin. Usually, I either know I'm writing a one shot, and it tends to be a one shot, especially if it's like not safe for work. I don't get particularly attached to these projects because they really are just standalone smuts, and that's what they are, and they're great to write. But I try to like not get carried away with them. Um, but then on the other side, like if I know I'm sitting down to write something longer, I will kind of pencil out a little bit of an idea for it. So this was definitely an outlier. I know some people, they do it all the time. They write a single chapter and then before they know it, they're on chapter 10. That really happened, I think, twice only. Like this one and one of the very first fanfics I've written, which kind of wasn't always meant to be a longer story, but I didn't really have a direction, and it just kept building on top of chapters on top of chapters, and until I had to structure it because it was getting annoying. But this is really the first time I feel like it really just, this was meant to be a one shot, and it became 4 chapters. I don't really tend to do that very often though.
Okay. Now, what were you gonna say, Heather, before I interrupted you with my ADHD?
I don't think I remember.
Today's gonna be one of those days, man. Oh my goodness. And I apologize if you guys can hear that bird that is absolutely losing its mind outside my window. It's currently driving me up the wall.
What was your favorite part when you were writing this? Like, did you have a scene or dialogue that you really enjoyed, or when you were planning everything out that you were really excited to get to?
Yes, there is definitely. I always do this thing where if I am outlining something longer, I have a scene that I'm really looking forward to. Um, but a lot of the time, the one that I actually become very proud of is something else entirely. Uh, but for this one, I think what I was really looking most forward to from the outline stage was like kind of chapter probably 4, like the ending of with kind of the reckoning and the like the two of them coming together on some sort of a speaking terms,
Yeah.
I guess. And that's what I was looking forward to, because I thought, you know, it's this kind of first real connection, and it's just also bittersweet after what happened. But what I ended up enjoying the most during writing, and still in hindsight, just reading it, it's chapter 2, I think, where Lucy finds herself unable to shoot the guy. So they end up in a standoff, and Lucy has the gun, and Cooper is very smug, and he says, "Go on then." He knows she's not going to do it. He sees right through her, and it infuriates her, I think, that he can tell what's going through her head. But in that moment, she's not a killer. She can be if her life is on the line, but it wasn't. So, we see that in the Mart. She shoots Martha in kind of direct, trying to protect her life, because she just saw what these ghouls did to the other guys, and she doesn't want to be ripped apart. So I think that's like fully self-defense kill. Whereas in the setup in chapter 2, I have it a little bit more intimate, where she has the gun, she has the upper hand, and she can't pull the trigger. So that, to me, is one of my favorite parts, I think, from this fic, and just probably one of my favorite bits that I've written in a while.
I enjoyed that a lot, and I enjoy the what you do with your voice and the subtle colloquialisms. I thought you might be saddle sore from the last time. Take your rest. That was excellent.
I didn't know how that was going to land, because I don't know. I'm not American. I don't get the twang, right? I don't really get it that much. But I am a bit of a mimic, because I had to learn English on the go in school, and I was I had to adapt. I had to figure things out from the context and just sort of immerse myself. So when people sort of start saying things that I don't necessarily understand, it doesn't take me that long to sort of feel out what's happening. So I didn't really know if oh, you might be a little bit saddle sore. I was I'm not sure if that's going to work. I feel like that's something Cooper would say.
Oh, he for sure would say that. I feel like he would be he would love the fact that she couldn't walk right after fucking Lucy. Let's be honest. And he would not let her live this down ever, because that's just who he is. And that's one of the reasons why we love him. So the fact that that line was there, I just felt like it was perfect characterization for him.
Sorry,
no,
go on.
No. I was just gonna say, is it easier to write Cooper or Lucy or both, or does it depend?
Good question. Did you say, is it easier? Is that the question? Easier. Define easy. I think both come with challenges. Both come with challenges.
Who was more fun?
Cooper.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Lucy. He's just older, weirder, more crippled emotionally. So it's just so much fun.
Complexity, though. We love his complexity, though, as a character. Yeah. And that's what makes him so intriguing.
Yeah. He's just he's like Shrek. He's onions. Onions have layers.
The layers, yes, absolutely. I love that.
He is an onion.
I don't think I have not heard that comparison yet. I think that's hilarious. He's like Shrek.
Think about it. Shrek and Donkey. Except the donkey is a beautiful ball titty.
Love it so much. Oh my god, you just made my whole life. That is excellent.
And Anytime you have a grumpy character and a chirpy character, ask yourself, is this Shrek and
Oh
Donkey?
my god. Doggy or Grumpy Sunshine until you pointed that out. I'm
Shrek and
crying.
Donkey, the OG Grumpy Sunshine mold.
Yes.
They are the blueprint.
Oh my gosh. Now, now I'm gonna read these Cooper Lucy fics and put them against. Do they pass the Shrek and Donkey test? Because if not, it's not cutting it.
Right. But like, okay, my brain is going down an ADHD rabbit hole with this right now because they're like gonna go on a journey together, just like Shrek and Donkey did.
Stop.
Like,
Yeah.
I cannot.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. That's funny. Oh wow. Oh my gosh.
Can you see yourself writing a follow-up or like a sequel or partner work to this fic?
Would I? Or like,
Do you have plans to, or
nope. At this stage, nope. Currently, I think it's self-contained. I don't want to mess with it anymore. If I did want to go back to the theme and the topic, I would probably start a new one or do like an offshoot because I feel like chapter one has potential to go into different directions, like very, very different directions. So I could potentially just go, okay, here's like an alternate version that can explore the other way, where
I would also read,
kind of sorry.
which I would also read, by the way. Like, I'm up for it.
Yeah, I think the other version would be like Cooper basically just listening to the evil Kermit in his head the entire time and just like pushing away his humanity. So that has potential to get really bad really quickly. But I would be interested to write it. I just don't know if I would do it in kind of the context of this first chapter or something new, like a separate standalone. I just feel like chapter one sets it up so well that you could take two different routes. So if I did write something, it would be something like that. But currently, no plans, no promises.
Would you say that when you write stuff like non-con, the physical act itself represents control? And so like when he wants to dominate and control her, right? And he wants her submission. And when you see something like Dub, or even during, because even during the non-con, he made sure to enjoy it. And I really liked that he did it as a way to sort of, again, it's that control of like, look what I can make your body do, essentially, you know? And I feel like her response, especially going into the dubcon stuff, is, you know, I think especially as women, we're for the most part, we're like organized. We kind of have to, whether we're keeping our shit together at home or whether we're keeping our shit together at school or at work, every once in a while there's that fantasy of someone completely taking control away from us, so we don't have to make those decisions and we don't have to like be responsible for anything. And I feel like when she starts letting herself enjoy submitting or just having this control taken from her, it's like we can relate to that in the way that, okay, I want everything off my plate and just let someone else take care of it. And I think that that's a really good symbolism for stuff like Dead Dove or non-con, dubcon. And I think that that's why people don't talk about it, but I think it's a lot more popular than people realize or maybe even want to admit.
Absolutely. I definitely have a lot to reply to this because
Yeah, go for it.
the last thing you said, absolutely. People read it a lot more than they care to admit or than they feel safe to admit. Because currently that is my highest hit Goosey fanfic. But it's not the highest kudos one. So it's like the the ratios, they are so predictable. But people are reading it, and I hope they're enjoying it for whatever enjoyment they're getting out of it. And I think that the part about control, it is just so, so interesting because on one hand, I feel like, yes, you have that idea of, you know, particularly like in the context of like whatever patriarchy or
Right.
sexism, like women wanting to sort of be absolved of their own desires by quote unquote being forced into them, like in that fictional fantasy scenario. Like, I'm not sure if you've watched ContraPoint's Twilight video, but that whole video sums up everything so well. Like she explains it in a way that kind of resonates with me, and I think that the lack of control in that scenario, it it's supposed to sort of a lot like be a vehicle for just letting go.
Mhm.
So when the control is taken, whether the control is taken from you or you give it up willingly, the end result is really all the same. It's just how you get there. It's the complete sort of letting go, and your hands are off the wheel.
Yeah.
And for Lucy, it's that moment of, you know, she's been out of vault, she's been out and about, hands on the wheel the whole time, and she's looking for her dad, and then this happens, and she has to, like, her hands are taken off the wheel. And then she just gets put into that house where she can't really leave, but she can't kill him.
Mhm.
So the control is completely removed. The only way she can really get away is by shooting the guy, and she's not capable of that.
I love too that you gave her that choice. Like, regardless of the control being stripped away from her, like Cooper gives her the choice, like, shoot me or don't, you know? And I think that to continue with the symbolism of it's sort of an acknowledgement of she's still choosing to be around him. She's choosing not to, you know, to kill him. And I feel like it goes back to like there is part of us, whether we want to talk about it or not, that would choose just to have someone help, like just, you know, like sometimes I'll even talk to my husband, like just make all the decisions today. Like I don't want to do, I don't want to think about anything. Like you handle everything. And, you know, whether there are going to be decisions I agree with or not, that's not the point. It's just taking that away. And yet Lucy still has some kind of power in the power of the choice. And I really love, especially in fiction and fanfic, exploring that choice, because I feel like it's so heavily weighted compared to what a lot of people who maybe aren't deep into like non-con or dark romance or whatever, they don't realize how important choice really is. And I really like how you characterize Lucy, because I completely agree. Like, regardless of this terrible thing happening to her, she is not a killer in that particular moment. Like, like you said, I completely believe that she would kill if her life was on the line, or if someone she loves life was on the line. But if it came down, like, I don't think she views this as the same thing. And I loved how you really had her upset with herself. It's like that internalized guilt of feeling good. And I think that we as women, we can completely we get that, because it's like, you know, whether it's eating, you know, a piece of chocolate or just enjoying our sexual kinks or whatever, there's always that weighted guilt of you should be liking this or you shouldn't like this because of, you know, what society and the expectations of. And I love that we can explore this with, you know, fanfic. And like I said, I think your fic does a really beautiful job of those intricate emotions that both of them are experiencing because of what happened. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's like a really good point because I definitely try to give way to both perspectives, and I don't care how terrible it is to read or whatnot. Um, like for me, definitely, I think I definitely relate to that part of, oh, we are raised in a certain way, we're socialized in a certain way, and I kind of, I definitely try to put a little bit of the perspective of both Lucy and Cooper into it. Because on her side, it's the guilt of pleasure, or in this scenario, it's obviously a bit more of a worse situation where she doesn't want to be in
yeah,
that position. But it does actually happen as well for people who want to do something but then feel guilty about it, or
yeah,
feel like, there's that sense of shame, right? It's the shame around anything that is supposed to feel good, it's supposed to be nice, but people still have that shame attached to it. And on the other hand, you have Cooper's perspective, which is fucked, and he's he's not in control of his life since the bombs dropped.
mhm,
Um, he is put in a situation, and he's a survivor in every sense of the word. And I think when he finally snaps, it's kind of like he's taking revenge on the whole world for what was done to him as well. It's like that sense of fuck Voltec, fuck you, fuck the Volts, fuck Barb, fuck my life. He's just taking taking the control, because he's not really in control of the situation.
no, he's
He
not.
thinks he is, but it's that need in his head, I think, to grasp some sort of control again, and he just gives in to that demon in his head.
Well, and he's been
Um,
holding it back for 219 years too. Like if you think about
yeah.
it, because he still doesn't have answers with Vault-Tec. He lost his daughter. His wife essentially lied to him, used him, betrayed him.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't even take his dog in the vault. So all of these little pieces of the life that he thought he was going to have get ripped from him. So like you said, the control was stripped from him, but in the worst possible way, because it was essentially from his wife, this person that he thought, he could trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he sees Lucy, who represents everything that, his wife was, Vault, like you said, everything. And for her to bite off his finger, like, so essentially something else
Yeah.
was taken from him by this, little girl. It's for me, I completely understand why he suddenly snapped. And I thought that that was a really good point that I didn't even think about, like that you think that Cooper is so in control, and he really is in terms of his skill in getting the bounty, but in terms of how he ended up the way that he ended up, he had no control. And so
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he's trying to take control back is, I really like that explanation for it, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's just her biting that finger off in that moment. It just adds insult to injury, because it's her in a vault suit biting his finger off, his trigger finger of all
Yeah.
the 10 digits she could bite. That's how he's earned his way in the wasteland, by killing, by being a bounty hunter. And taking away that finger, it like takes his livelihood away from him nearly. you
Yeah.
know
That
so
it's
it's like,
a big slap in the face.
it's a slap in the face, exactly. And it's, I think, basically that scene, metaphorically, that is what it is. It's a slap in the face, where it's like, that's too much now. That's the indignity he can't suffer anymore.
Do you think that if you did choose to write the darker Cooper, that what, like, would you explore it in terms of Lucy's reaction to Dark Cooper, or I should say Darker Cooper, like if we're going left instead of the right, like, do you think it would be possible for Lucy to develop emotional attachment to Cooper if he's like Dark Cooper? In your fic, maybe not necessarily in the canonical world, but in the fic that you would write.
Oh, I don't think so. I really don't. I think where we are in this story, in this kind of timeline, she's barely there as it is.
Yeah.
I was trying to focus on not making it too, what do you call it? Basically, on her side, on both of their sides, it's like a purely sort of erotic relationship.
Yeah.
Where they find something in the other that they either didn't know they missed or they want to really, really badly the whole time. And I think it's really hard to talk about emotional attachment, even when in the context of the story that is there and written. And I think any sort of attachment would be even harder in this other hypothetical road that we could take. I think it would be very much resentment, very much hatred. I think it would be a beginning of more like a corruption arc for Lucy more than anything else. I think it could push her to become a lot more bitter, a lot more unkind, and just a worse, much worse version of herself. But I don't really see a road to emotional attachment in that. Emotional attachment as in sense of dependency, maybe.
Yeah.
But not really, nothing genuine. I don't think so.
Okay.
Just like side note question, are you a dark romance reader? Like, do you read a lot of dark romance books?
Okay, confession time. I read fewer and fewer fiction books as years go by. I used to be an avid reader when I was little, and then a teen. I kind of come out of the fantasy genre, and I think that's probably why Fallout is quite accessible. I don't really gravitate towards IPs with like a lot of gun violence or too modern, too similar to the modern world. But Fallout has that enough of a fantasy spin on it that it's nice, and it's post-apocalyptic. That's cool. That's bonus points. But I don't consider myself a dark romance reader. Funny enough, I absolutely love writing that stuff. I don't really read it, which is probably terrible.
Yeah. Everybody has their own.
I love like dark fantasy, like in general, just dark fantasy. One of I think the most like don't want to say influential. That's not a great word for this, but like sort of trajectory changing books, I think, or series for me was Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. So I came into that book at a kind of mid-late teenage age, and I was like, "Ooh, dark fantasy, yeah, let's go." And then I read a couple of chapters, I was like, "Oh, this is pretty dark. Okay." I opened the book and it was dark, just what it said on the cover. But something about it was so visceral. I absolutely love the main character, the way he's crafted, the way he's just so horrible. I don't want to spoil anything, but he's pretty horrible from the very beginning. And you're like, how the hell am I supposed to read about this guy for 3 books? And yeah, he's fascinating. It's just what's going on through that head, and then the past is revealed, and that just adds more layers. And I absolutely love that. And I think that now that I've been writing Cooper a lot, I'm really enjoying that sort of writing from that broken perspective.
Can
It's
I just
fascinating.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't read a lot of fiction books too. I know I should as a writer. I gravitate more towards fan fiction. And it's because I feel like I don't know if it's because it's the characters that I already love and it's the ships
Mm,
that I already love. So I already know I'm gonna get what I want out of it. But sometimes I feel like even the level of writing is just so beautiful and on point, like the sex scenes even. I feel like if I ever need to sort of like get in the mood to write a sex scene, I don't read like fiction. I'll read like a one shot, like super spicy, like fanfic, because
mm,
it's just for me like the characterization, the plot structure, like even the one shots, I just feel sometimes are so much more inspiring to me than like a lot of other books. And so yeah, I completely understand it. And especially like there are times when I'll read like a series, you know, like kind of like what you mentioned, and then just be so wrecked afterwards that it's like, how can I follow like with any other book right now? Like I need that time to sort of, you know, mourn the fact that I am not in this world anymore, that I went through this
yeah,
series.
yeah. I feel like that might be part of the reason why I'm reading less and less fiction. It's just so there's something special I think about fantasy,
Yeah.
and it's the best genre. I I will not take any notes. And it just pulls you in harder than a lot of others. I think it's hard to move on from fantasy once you finished a series or even a book. If it's a really good book, it just leaves a lack behind because it's a whole world. It's not just the characters. It's not
Yeah.
set in this same old boring world. It's all new. Um, so that definitely plays a part in it.
Do you have any upcoming fic ideas or any that you're currently writing when it comes to Gulsi?
Mm, yes. Mm, my mind just went blank.
Mhm.
Yes, I have some files on on here that I'm working on. There's one sort of like family fluff that I'm working on, and I just haven't been able to get back in the mood for it for like a week, but I will get back to it. It's going to be like super cute. And there is a couple of sort of like smart one shots that
Mhm.
I will be writing. Um, there was one idea that I had for um like sort of the modern alternate universe or like pre-war.
Yeah.
Um, and I just thought like how could these characters interact if we're talking about like pre-war Cooper
Yeah.
and Lucy, but that doesn't seem to interest me as much. Like I know there are some people out there writing a lot for pre-war Cooper and Lucy, and like have at it. It's great. Like I'll support people. It's just not as interesting to me as School Cooper. No knows. He's been through a lot of these experiences that Lucy's going through firsthand, or for first time in the current timeline. So in a way. You know, we've spoken about how Lucy reminds him of Voltec, his past, all the betrayals, but she reminds him of himself, I think, the most,
Oh yeah.
because he was that clueless guy at some point. He was um just trying to survive the immediate aftermath of the bombs, and then just trying to stay alive for some reason. Um, so I think he really sees himself in her a lot. That I think Pre-War Cooper just couldn't in the same sense. I don't think that connection would be as, you know, the
This
parallels that people speak of. It just wouldn't be as deep, I think.
I find it interesting because I've read a couple of fics where it's pre-war Cooper, and I think that pre-war Cooper is essentially the cinnamon roll golden retriever boyfriend. He's super romantic, he's super in love with Barb.
Yeah.
And I think that that's great. If you want to throw in a couple of kinks there, he's obviously older and, you know, dad is in love with him, but kind of hates him too, which is great. But I do agree that there's just, for me personally, there's just something about obviously the age gap, the experienced paired with the inexperienced, you know, the grumpy with the sunshine, because pre-war Cooper is sunshine. Like, he is not grumpy whatsoever.
Mhm.
And then obviously this like angsty broken guy with, you know, this hopeful girl who sees the good in everybody. But on a completely physical level, I am so drawn to sort of like, because let's just, you know, call a spade. Like, Cooper Howard as a ghoul is ridiculously attractive. But if we're talking just, you know, subjectively, like, he's not gonna be, you know, like, if we're in the modern world, you're gonna probably choose somebody who's a little bit more socially acceptable in terms of looking versus, you know, Cooper Howard as a ghoul. However, I just find it so fascinating when the guy who like pushes you or treats you like, I don't want to say like he's basically an asshole, but that physical look of him being a monster, essentially, with like paired with this girl who looks so innocent and pure. Like, I love that contrast because she's supposed to go with the Prince Charming who is very good looking, like very Max, right? Like, she's supposed to go with someone like him, not only on that deeply internal level, but just from a physical standpoint. And I just love when they turn it on their head and it's like, no, actually the one who's the monster is the one who actually is looking out for you or wanting the best for you. And I love stuff like that. So I'm really hoping that the show leans into that, because I think that, you know, I don't want that like cheesy, kitschy love story. Like, and that's why I'm drawn to
Yeah.
Cooper as the ghoul versus, and I
Mm.
love pre-war Cooper. I love him,
Mhm.
but I do agree with you that the parallels and the mirroring would not be as strong between them as they are now. And I just think everything works so much for them right now.
They gel so well. And yeah, in terms of the social acceptability, I could like rant the whole day. We've just got to the appearance part, and that is so, I think, big in this ship that I love exploring. I absolutely love the fact that he's like, whatever, hideous
Right.
in whatever sense of the word, right?
Right.
Um, absolutely love that stuff. So one time I've seen someone tweet something like, Max is the guy Lucy thinks she wants. And I just haven't been able to get that out of my head because she's been sort of conditioned, or not conditioned, like, or she's been raised in an environment and appearance doesn't seem to matter to her that much. But it's the idea of building a family, and I was watching some scenes again earlier this week, and the scene she has, the very brief moment when she goes with her arranged husband, NCR Ranger, into their little apartment. And just before they get to business, she's like, oh my God, imagine all the Christmases and all the, little things. And she's all about building a home, and, she would have little chickens in there if she could, she's just all about that idea of a perfect life and a perfect family and having kids and all that. But it's something she wants because Voltec wants her to want it. It's not that she doesn't have agency in her own wishes. I think it's genuine at the beginning when she's, I want to do this marriage exchange. She knows what she wants in that way, and it's all fully consensual. But I think in retrospect, she's really going to realize, like, oh, I didn't know shit. I was just wanting this, and I was kind of just breeding stock, really, just like everyone else. And Chet and her brother, right? They'll marry some Voltec blondie or whatever, and that's what they are. That's what they are in that vault. And I think she will have a really tough time coming to terms with it, because that's her main motivation in the beginning. She's like, I need the family, I need to procreate.
Well, and I think what I loved how the writers did it in that scene is that when she's walking with Norm, she's talking about, oh, something about like, oh, I wonder what my husband is going to be, or what he's going to look like. And then you have Norm saying, well, what if he's a cannibal? And Cooper is literally like a cannibal. I love foreshadowing like that. Like, I love stuff where it's like she thinks she wants one thing, but she actually, what she needs is this other thing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think this whole series, I every time I try to explain it, what I'm thinking about, the theme of not people not having the identity that they say they do, or kind of judging the book by the cover. Like, I've been trying to explain it to my boyfriend, and he kind of looks at me like I have 10 heads, and I'm like, oh, walk with me here. This whole show is about people putting a face on, and I still have not come up with words to put this into a cohesive statement. But if you think about it, Lucy comes into everything with her full unredacted self, her authentic self. And I think she's only discovering those like layers beneath, that there's anger, that there is violence in there, but she's never untrue. Whereas I feel like her dad is literally wearing a mask the entire time in the vault. So he's a key player. Barb is wearing a mask. She is not telling Cooper anything, or not the important things anyway, that she should be really telling him. So she's in a way wearing a mask as well. Cooper is a very strange one because he's an actor. So you have the acting, literal acting part of wearing a mask, but then he kind of takes that role of a cowboy.
Yeah.
And he travels the wasteland kind of acting out this role, and he's hyping it up, he's exaggerating it, because I think it shields him from reality. It's, probably much easier to dissociate and sort of, it's the ghoul killing these people, not Cooper Howard, right? Like, it's that level of disconnect. And then we have Max, who literally shows up in shining armor,
Yeah,
to the scene to rescue Lucy. But from the very beginning of the show, we know he has a vengeful streak. He is in the Brotherhood to hurt the people who hurt him. That is not a good motivation.
right.
But he's presented to Lucy, and by extension the audience, as this knight in shining armor. So there's like disconnects in a lot of people with how they present and how they're seen by the world. and what's really there. And some people do it on purpose, others not so much. But it's about what's underneath. Um, and that's where the appearance comes in as well. It's what's inside that matters. Again, same thing. I think it's a huge theme in the whole show.
Do you have any theories? Or I should ask, do you have any scene or things that you would want to see in season 2?
Hmm. I would probably like to see some level of I think change in Lucy, like permanent change. I think she can't really remain the person that she is and have a good time. So either she's going to struggle or she's going to change. Mm. And it would be really interesting to see her develop a little bit of a mask of her own. Um, I don't know what that would be, but I think there is room for that. I think there's room for that. I think she could very convincingly remain a good person while putting on a tough exterior, possibly. That's something she could learn from Cooper pretty quickly, I think. I again, I don't think he's a bad person either. He's an asshole, and
He's
you
never
don't
lied to
care.
her though.
That's the thing, and it brings me right back to the appearances,
Yeah.
lies, deceptions, masks.
And
What's a
that's
mask but a lie?
so far is lie. So like
Yeah.
it's a nice dichotomy there.
Yeah, no, he's like just the stark reality in her world, because she sees the wasteland, it's all around her, the realities are around her, and yet she just refuses to see it. When people fight over a piece of bread, she's like, "Oh no, this is terrible tragedy." Whereas Cooper's like, "Sometimes fella's gotta eat a fella,"
Yeah.
it is what it is, and he's trying to show her that, like, this is what it is. This is the world,
Do you
and
think that the
you either live
writers,
or die.
oh yeah, do you think that the writers are doing it on purpose because I completely 100% agree. I think that literally Max showing up in armor and you see Lucy follow him with her eyes and she thinks that she's already intrigued at the very least by him. And I just feel like they're pushing these things, I think, on the nose for a reason, or at least I'm hoping for a reason, because in the end, it has to be Cooper, because I feel like the way that Lucy was intrigued by Max, Cooper was intrigued by Lucy when she starts reciting, like, let's everyone take a breath, like, you are probably the aggressor here, like, and I just, because Chelsea and I have talked about this ad nauseum, like there are so many times that he could have just killed her and he doesn't. And I feel like that is so very telling, because if his character motivation is he just wants answers, he wants to find his family, then he didn't need Lucy alive for going to using her as bait. He could have killed her after the Raj thing. He could have killed her so many different times and he just never did. And so as much as he hates her, it's like you said, I think he sees himself in her too, where he just can't he can't do it. And I think it's that level of intrigue. And I'm hoping, because there's so many things, and I saw this on Tumblr, where it's like you have the Radiation King, you have the Atomic Queen, but you also have Max, who's literally a knight. And so you have 3 different, like royal titles essentially. And I'm just like, this cannot be like accidental or coincidental. I'm seriously hoping that all of the parallels, all of the mirroring that are between Cooper and Lucy are done for this significant reason. And I feel like the way that Lucy watches Max move in episode 2, it almost felt like it was overdone to the point where, like, because it's like she's seen people, and yeah, they're not the greatest looking people, but and maybe it's more like she's intrigued by what Max is because she recognizes, you know, the suit, but I'm just like, she can't possibly, like, I don't know. I'm hoping that it's just done so purposeful that, you know, that
Yeah,
it's done.
I feel like him showing up in shining armor is very on the nose, and I think that is on purpose. I think that is definitely it's supposed to be funny. Like the tone of the scene is
Yes,
humor.
for sure.
He shows up and he starts basically like if he could wink with his armor, you know, like he would absolutely do a little wink towards Lucy. And she's just there like, oh my god, he's come to save me from this terrible ghoul. And she just basically her knees are jelly straight away. She's like, this is so good that this happened to me. This person's clearly good. She gets a good first impression, a really good first impression, which is yet again bringing me back to this grand theory that I'm gonna start like pinning on my wall with red tape, like with red string even. Um, she gets a really good first impression of Max, and when she has to convince him to give the power thing, the power brick, the fusion core back to Vol 4, she doesn't really question that, and she doesn't really think that he wasn't going to do it if she weren't there, if she wasn't there. So she's kind of, I think, ignoring
Yeah.
little bits and pieces because she wants to believe someone's good here. And she has a good first impression of Max, and she thinks, you know, this is the good person. Um, and she wants to believe that, I think. Because I think it would be really difficult for her to realize, no, actually, there really isn't anyone like me out here who's just genuinely trying to do the right thing. Everyone's a little bit selfish out there. Um, and Max's motivations are murky at best. So yeah, she has a really good first impression of Max and a really terrible first impression of Cooper. And I think the show will really try to work with that first impression, what it does, and how it can be turned on its head. I would hope for that. I think that would be interesting. I think that would be narratively engaging. So that's the thing, you know. When I tell people Goofy is happening, I don't just mean it because I have obviously like
Yeah.
rosy
Or shipper
glasses on,
glasses. Yeah.
shipper glasses. Like yeah, I have them too. But from a storytelling point of view, would it not just be so incredibly boring if Lucy is, you know, her first impression is correct on both accounts, and Cooper is just terrible, and they never develop any bond, and Max is just great, and they end up happily ever after in love, or whatever. Maybe there's a tragedy, but you know, they end up being devoted in some way. I think that would just be terribly boring because there's no movement, there's no point A, no point B, it's just static. If people begin in a certain way, Cooper and Lucy begin on a bad foot and bad terms. If they end on bad terms, then there's no relationship arc. I just kind of,
No,
I just
no. That's
peer
why
it open and I'm like, look
well,
inside, look
well, that's
inside.
why
No, it's Goosey.
no, that's why Chelsea and I started the podcast in the first place, was because we're obviously like Chelsea and I have done a lot of like crack shipping, and we've been done dirty like by writers in past fandoms. But for this specific show, it's exactly what you said, because it's like, even if you set aside the shipping, like there's too much here that from a storytelling standpoint, like you said, like it's just too important. Like, and our big thing is episode 4, which is that midpoint between the 8 episodes. Max is nowhere near Lucy and Cooper, and both of them learn a valuable lesson from each other, where Lucy watches Cooper essentially do that mercy killing of Raj, and which she will then go on to do to her mom. So like you see that sort of Chekhov's gun, and it happens again. Where and Cooper learns that Lucy's genuine belief in goodness in everyone is actually true, because she winds up saving his life when she does not have to. And I feel like there's too much there. And it's really interesting that you said, because I feel like when you're talking about first impressions and just that sort of relationship arc, I feel like for me, the vibe, Max is constantly lying to Lucy. And I feel like she, like you said, she so desperately wants to believe the good in him. And it's going to take something big for her to realize he isn't what he seems like, just because he's putting on this armor, just because he's, you know, a socially acceptable, attractive guy who she wants to, you know, let's meet back in the vault and let's get married kind of thing. You know, we're going to tie it all up with a bow. I think that it would be so much more fascinating to make her realize, like, actually Cooper is right and people are deceptive. But you know what? Who's never been deceptive with me is Cooper. He might not tell me everything, but you know what? He's not lying to me. He's presenting exactly as yeah. Whether she wants to hear it or not, and probably in like a really dickish way, but he still tells her about it, you know?
He's honest with her, I think, because he sees himself in her.
Yeah.
So I think that's easier, because he's not so he's definitely quite terrible in other episodes, in other scenes where Lucy's not around. I don't know how much he values her, to be fair. Even by the end of the season, I think until episode 4-ish, he does not give a damn about her either way. She becomes a valuable sack of organs at some point, and that's what he sees in her, the value of being exchanged for medicine. But when she proves him right, or she proves him wrong, and she says, no, I can be good. You dunked me in water, you cut my finger, you did all these things, and you know, I'm just going to give you the vials because I'm not cruel. I think that does something important. That's the midway point, as you said.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of, we're going on the other side now. And by the end of the show, I think he probably still sees her as a little more than, the dog that he saved. I think he has that same level of like, oh, isn't she so just helpless? I think it's a little bit of pity, maybe, that she's out and about in this cruel world and she doesn't really know that much better than be kind. But that is endearing, and I think he can't really resist that for a long time. I don't think he'll be able to. No. I want to believe.
Yeah.
Me too. And like I'm sitting here with my crack shipper glasses on, like looking at the tiniest details, like the I love you graffiti on the wall behind him in the scene where she's drinking irradiated water, and I'm just like, please let that be intentional, please.
Well, it has to be. They created the set. It's not like they randomly went to a place in a wasteland where there was that. Like I just feel like there has to be some reason for it. And I saw on Tumblr, even in the game, there was no actual Atomic Queen brand in the game, but there is a brand in the game for Radiation King. And so this Tumblr user actually like looked through it and was like, no, they specifically created this brand and associated it with Lucy after she gets stabbed in the vault. And for with Cooper obviously being the radiation king, I'm like, there are too many weird little coincidences that tell me it has to mean something.
Absolutely. I mean, I've compiled a whole massive thread about all the parallels, and I kind of forget half of them at this point, but I just know they're there.
Yeah.
And even little bits like the I love you graffiti, you know, they just, again, from storytelling, from production point of view, you have limited time in each episode. You have only so much real estate on the camera, you know, to show at every given frame, like every scene needs to count. And they had literally a list of things to include, Fallout things. And I think they definitely left out some very like high hitting items like death claws. Everyone's like, where are the death claws? Give
Right.
me a death claw. But I'm like, okay, well, it's coming probably in season 2 because they
sure.
probably looked at the list and there's like a death claw in big cap letters, like
Yeah.
number 1 on the list, being like, you guys need to put a death claw in their series. But they're like, you know, we have time. We've got time.
Right.
They probably didn't want to jam it in, and they were spacing out all the massive amount of references and world building bits that were given to them. And yet there is a little I love you graffiti on the wall. You know, it's just they could have done literally anything else with that wall. They could have left it blank. They could have put a little like I
Like
don't know,
humor, like the
faction
humor, like
logo
fuck you
or
or whatever, like, you
yeah,
know,
or
like
just a dick or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like
But they didn't.
who writes I love you on walls?
Especially in the wasteland. Like, who does that?
It makes no sense. But it does if you have the tripper glasses on.
Right.
And
If you're looking
yeah,
for it. Yeah.
if you're looking for it, you kind of do have to look for it though because it's really in the background. I
It's
did
so
not notice it.
subtle. Yeah. And that's
Mhm.
why I love the Ghoulsy fandom, is that like there are people who do look for it, and like
Mhm.
they go off, like they find these things, and it just gets me really excited because it's like there's more evidence. Like, I'm not going crazy. Like, I'm like, because I always try to set aside like what you say, like from a storytelling point of view, like if we set aside the chemistry between the two actors, and they really lucked
Mhm.
out with those two because there's so much chemistry, but it's like if we're
Oh
just
yeah.
looking at it from a storytelling perspective, it's like too much matches up, where they're like literal mirrors of each other. And I'm really excited for season 2. I can't wait to see what they do. There's always that like 2% of me that's like, I really hope they don't fuck this up, because I feel like a relationship like Cooper and Lucy's, if they did give us what we want, is rarely seen nowadays in, well, maybe even
Mhm.
ever in this mainstream pop culture, because of all of, he doesn't represent what we should want. And I feel like storytelling in that mainstream world is constantly trying to push society's values on us and trying to tell us what we need to want to be accepted within the parameters of our society. And I think that this is why Chelsea and I are so drawn to these either crack ships or even to like dark romance stuff, is because we want to push back on that and be like, I don't want the Prince Charming. I don't want that fairy tale let's run off
Mhm.
into the sunset. I want, I want Cooper Howard as a ghoul, specifically, dragging Lucy around the wasteland with a lasso around her neck. Like, that is what I want to see. And I'm just hoping that
Mhm.
they actually do it. So,
Yeah, I definitely have hopes. More than hopes, I would say. I'm probably one of the, like ghosty evangelists out here. I'm like, no, it's happening, guys. Blame me if it doesn't happen. I'll take the blame. But I'm winding it up. I'm absolutely mostly convinced that it's going to happen because, as I said, there are just so many parallels, clues, narrative, just narrative doors. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like, it just feels like they're gonna walk right through that door. I can see it like far down the line. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So either we're all going insane or it's gonna happen. And I hope we're not all
I was
going
that
insane.
way with Nancy and Ace in the CW Nancy Drew show. Like episode 1, I spotted that and I was like, oh, they're gonna happen, and everybody was like, nah, for a long time. And then slowly other Nace shippers started coming out of the woodwork, and even though I was kind of quiet about it, I was like, wait, there's more people out here who see it too. And I just wish we had not gotten robbed of more seasons, and that they hadn't had to pivot the end of season 4 so hard, because they found out very late in filming of season 4 that the show was getting canceled.
Well, I think too, to your point, Chelsea, is that the chemistry between Nancy and Ace, well, because I think originally the end game was supposed to be Nancy and Nick, like, because canonically that's what they were. But I love them as friends, but they just didn't have that chemistry the way Nancy and Ace did. And I feel like they had to shift the story around, because if they knew that the two characters had that chemistry, they might have done a completely different thing. Whereas like with even to a degree, Yellowstone, right? Like Rip and Beth have all of this chemistry, and the writers have done such a good job with it because they haven't had to shift, because not only does the story match up, but the actors have that chemistry. And that's why I think casting is so important, even from a storytelling point of view, because if we're looking at Fallout, not only do the actors have so much chemistry, but it's like the story is all there. And I think that's why we're all like seriously like not only hoping but believing that, oh, our ship is going to be canon, right? Whereas with Nancy and Drew, like, or not Nancy and Drew, Nancy and Ace, like that was a crack ship, because it's like, oh yeah, me and you saw the chemistry from that first episode, and it was like, but the writers wanted to, I don't want to say force, because they had the story. I thought the story was excellently plotted, but it's just when you're visually showing a story like that, if your actors don't have chemistry, that's kind of why a lot of my ships are crack ships, because I'm like, I don't believe this story. You haven't written it well enough for me to believe it, and your actors kind of suck at having that chemistry, in my opinion. But I completely 100% agree with what you're saying, Chelsea, too. Like,
yeah, like literally I shipped them from the moment where Ace tells Nancy, I think I'm growing on her, and she says like a fungus, Ace.
yeah.
And I was just like, they are gonna be a thing.
Well, yeah, I think that and I think that because of our background in the writing, it's like you want not only for your characters to have chemistry, but you want the story to back it up. And it's just disappointing because it's like they had 4 seasons, which on the CW is pretty damn good. And it's like you're so in denial, or you so want to force your own stuff to happen, that you can't just see the forest from the trees. And it's like you could have written this beautiful story between Nancy and Ace. And that's why I think, like I said, I think we're so obsessed with Fallout, is because not only do we have that visual with the 2 actors, but it's like the story is lining up with that. And I'm just hoping that they don't do us like Nancy Drew,
Right. And
I'm
like
just hoping for anything. I'm hoping that we get a lot of screen time between Lucy and Cooper.
Yes.
And the rest will write itself. I'll write it.
I wish that they
don't
would
need them
do
to be
that.
canon, but I would be very happy if they did.
And that's what Chelsea and I have said, is like, if you don't give us that on-screen romance, just give us something. Like, don't fuck this up. Like, don't have her go out and be with Max. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Chelsea, do you have any?
I can write the rest.
Yeah, you can't. I think so many fic authors are so much better than a lot of, the writers in Hollywood. And I'm not trying to be insulting, but it's like you should pick up like a book and figure out your craft, because I feel like romance just gets the butt end of everything. And so like there's a reason why
That's
nobody
unfortunate.
yeah, like I feel like that is why nobody takes romance very seriously. And it's because they don't know any better, because they're not shown anything good. And so like I have a huge issue with something like True Blood, which was so great the first 3 seasons, and then it went to hell. I can't rewatch that show anymore because I know how shitty the romance is. And even if it's not the main part of the storyline, fine, but if you can't write a damn good romance, then don't write romance at all. Don't use it as one of those shock values, or we're trying to get viewers, or we're trying to bait people to come in because we're going to put this romance in it. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, Chelsea and I are very, very passionate about stuff like that. Do you have any final questions, Chelsea?
I do not. I just loved the fic. If you enjoy exploring stuff that is psychologically dark and fascinating and interesting, I highly recommend reading it. It's awesome. It's fantastic. And like that's why I love dark things, is because the psychology of it fascinates me. And
That's why I write it.
yes, it was a joy to read. It was a joy to read.
Thank you.
And if anyone wants to support Mom, I think the best thing to do is obviously kudos, but I think comments really, really help fanfic authors. It helps their stories get more visible, and it means a lot. So thank you, Mom, for everything that you're doing, because we know that you're dedicating, you're donating your time. You don't have to do this. You're not getting paid for it. And I'm really looking forward to more of your stuff coming out. So we just really appreciate you sitting down and talking to us, because it's such a nice conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Yes. And we also
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Your talent.
Yeah.
It's not just like, that's what I love about fanfic authors and fan artists so much, is you are not just donating your time to this fandom and like dedicating it to the fandom and to the other people who enjoy this also, but it is your talent, your gift for storytelling, your gift for art, and it's a fantastic connection, and I don't really like know the best way to define it, but I just love that we love the fandom so much that we're willing to freely give this to the fandom.
I think it's a community.
Yeah.
Probably.
And that you take it seriously. Like you care about the structure of your stories. Like it's not just, oh, you're half-assing it because, you're not getting paid or you don't have deadlines or whatever. I feel like a lot of fanfic authors are so good at they care about their work, and I love that. I think that you care about this world and these characters, but you also care about your readers, and I get a sense of that, and I think that that's so beautiful to me. I love it.
Right. Well, in
I
a
think
sense,
it's a labor of love. It shows.
So, well, thank you so much for being here today. And we would love to have you back, especially when season 2 comes. We're thinking about possibly doing like a panel the closer we get to season 2 with other fanfic authors, just to talk theories and stuff. And we would love to invite you back for that, if you are able to, of course.
That would be great. Gonna bookmark my calendar.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Well, have a good one, and we will talk to you soon.
we loved having you. Thank you so much.